Hey, it's Trey Kay, and just recently, Us and Them received a regional Edward R. Murrow Award from the Radio Television Digital News Association. Our show was honored for excellence in diversity, equity, and inclusion for an episode highlighting the barriers Black West Virginians experience when they seek addiction treatment and recovery support. Now, we'd like to share an encore airing of that award-winning show.
Yeah, you gotta hit this.
Oh.
They got a trick for you. Huh. You ain't running out here with nothing.
I'm over at a white car.
Okay. This one right here with the New York plate?
Yeah, that's the one with the New York plates. Hey, it's Trey, and I'm heading over to the West Virginia Public Broadcasting Studios for an interview with a man named Kevin Watkins.
So let me just tell you, we're gonna go down Capitol Street here.
Kevin is around my age, which is in my 60s, and it turns out that we crossed paths as kids in Charleston, West Virginia.
I played football for Stonewall Jackson when they had it over Washington on West Side.
Okay, I'm gonna blow your mind here.
Okay.
Eddie Dias, Adolph Johnson.
Yeah, Count and all them.
Scott Shores.
Yeah, Scotty Shores, Big Jim.
Despite our overlapping history in Charleston youth sports, we've gone in different directions. We're meeting to talk about some of the harder moments in Kevin's life. But it's familiar territory for him. Kevin is a peer recovery coach for people struggling with substance use disorder. Sharing his journey with alcohol and drug abuse is a major part of his life.
My vocation is teaching, preaching that word, loving on people, man. That's what it's all about.
But before I sit down with Kevin Watkins, I call an old friend.
My name is James Patterson, and I am the CEO of the Partnership of African American Churches, and we are a healthcare providing organization.
In addition to the unprecedented actions from the White House and President Trump's appointed Government Efficiency Office, a newly elected Republican Congress is considering cuts as well. One target is Medicaid, the healthcare program for low-income Americans. In West Virginia, more than 500,000 people rely on Medicaid coverage to go to the doctors. Many use it to treat substance use disorder, drug addiction. The Mountain State has the nation's highest overdose rate. But that single data point doesn't tell the whole story. Black people make just 4% of West Virginia's population, yet the overdose rate for African Americans is higher than in any other group. It's a problem that folks on the ground have been trying to address for years. The new administration in Washington, D.C. has already begun to act on campaign promises to make the federal government more efficient and to ensure that programs support President Trump's goals. It's too soon to know how America's new leadership might manage Medicaid or addiction policy. But I would like to learn how that money is helping people recover from addiction right now in West Virginia's Black communities, and what that work looks like. From West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX, this is Us and Them. I'm Trey Kay.
Check. Okay, there's me. And let me just hear you.
Testing, 1, 2.
Can you come a little closer?
Testing, 1, 2.
That's even better. Yeah, that's right.
Reverend Patterson tells me about the healthcare organization he leads, the Partnership of African American Churches. It's where Kevin Watkins received training as a peer support coach. a major pillar in the partnership's operation. Reverend Patterson tells me about the organization's beginnings, and that means going back in time, before opioid addiction was even a headline.
We started doing after-school programming, and the reason we started doing that was because of the disparities that existed in terms of the achievement gaps.
About 20 years ago, my friend James Patterson, the Reverend, noticed a racial divide forming in West Virginia's school system. On average, white kids were faring much better in school than their black peers, and he wanted to do something about it. In addition to programs for kids, Patterson hosted community meetings to make sure their programs were actually helping people.
And every time we had discussions, I was doing focus group research and that kind of thing, we started talking about kids and the challenges and what have you and other challenges in the communities. And everybody would keep saying the real problem is them drugs. And that's the way they said it, them drugs. So we started doing prevention. We started training community health workers. And then we trained community health workers in peer support or recovery coaches, that kind of thing.
For me, where I started hearing about this different type of wave of opioid addiction, that was somewhere around 2010, 2011. President Obama came to West Virginia and talked about the high overdose rate.
More Americans now die every year from drug overdoses than they do from motor vehicle crashes, more than they do from car accidents. The majority of those overdoses involve legal prescription drugs.
I got several pictures with President Obama when he came to West Virginia. so we were part of that, that gathering there. We were the only organization of color that was doing that at this particular time.
Back then, Patterson knew addiction was a complicated problem to tackle in any community. But he says being black can add layers of complications to those seeking medical help, even for day-to-day problems. Patterson has experienced this firsthand. I remember one time he told me a story about going in for a routine doctor's visit.
And I'm sitting there in the little room, the exam room. And I'm expecting this doctor to be a professional, and da-da-da-da. So he comes in, he called me Bub.
Oh,
that's what he said. He said, "What's up, Bub? What's happening? What's wrong, Bub?" Keep in mind, I was born and raised in North Carolina. And Bub is something that older men of color used to be called. For whatever reason, back during that time, men of color, even though they were as old as the white person that they were talking to and dealing with, and they knew their name, they didn't call them by their name all the time. They called them Bub or whatever. Yeah. And so that just brought all of that back to me. And I said, wait a minute. My name is Bub. It's on the chart. Don't call me Bub. That's what bothered me so much. That he had the chart that had my name on it. It had it clear as day. James Patterson. Why couldn't he say? So that's that story.
When Patterson started working with others to create local addiction services, he knew that a lifetime of uncomfortable moments at the doctor can often prevent people from seeking out medical care or treatment for mental health conditions or drug addiction. Dr. Wendy Lewis is the clinical director for the Partnership of African American Churches. She's studied this phenomenon.
I did my dissertation on microaggression, and that's where folks on a daily basis have to experience daily annoyances because they are a certain color. Folks are insulted, they're invalidated, and they can be assaulted as well as a result of being
physically,
yes,
yeah.
And verbally and mentally assaulted as a result of being black. I see that as being a double malady that folks have to overcome on a daily basis if they're having challenges with addiction and racism. It is a level of stress that other folks don't have to experience.
The partnership has come a long way from its early days and has significantly built up its operation.
We are a licensed behavioral health center, and we also provide treatment for substance use disorder. We have residential treatment facility, we have medication-assisted treatment facility, and we also have multiple sober living facilities.
Do you remember hearing about drug abuse in West Virginia growing up or when you were a younger person?
I absolutely
Depending
do.
on what you
Depending
mean
on
by
what
young,
you mean
your
by
definition of
young, your
young,
definition
Trey.
of young, Trey, I would say it was in my high school years and early college. And the late 80s and early 90s was when I became aware of the crack epidemic that was throughout the country. And I noticed that there were quite a few folks that were connected to me who had challenges with addiction to crack cocaine. A family member of mine whom I was very close to ended up being the victim of a homicide, a drug-related homicide.
As a kid, Lewis thought she might want to be a teacher. But the death of her relative made her wonder how she might help prevent more deaths like his. At the time, James Patterson was her pastor.
Once I graduated from school, he wanted me to come and work for the partnership. And so since it was focusing on the challenges of the Black community, the community that I had grown up in, and also within the other communities within Kanawha County, and the issues on health disparities and educational gaps, I wanted to be a part of that.
And as we look back at the crack epidemic historically, it seemed to be something that seemed to impact African-American communities in a greater proportion. And was it that way here in West Virginia?
It was. During that time period, it was so extreme that it has continued to put a blemish on how folks in the Black community view substance use, addiction, and disorder. And so I think that had created a level of stigma that folks experience now, Black people who have challenges with substance use disorder, because of that epidemic and how it impacted the community back then.
In September 1989, President George H.W. Bush devoted his first ever television address to the nation's drug crisis.
Turn on the evening news or pick up the morning paper, and you'll see what some Americans know just by stepping out their front door. Our most serious problem today is cocaine, and in particular, crack. Who's responsible? Let me tell you straight out. Everyone who uses drugs.
2 years later, a future president from the other side of the political aisle stood on the Senate floor talking about laws Congress passed to criminalize crack use. The U.S. Senator from Delaware, Joe Biden, held up a quarter to the camera and declared,
"If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, $1/4 of $1, you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice."
The narrative I saw as being that it was a moral issue. There were not many treatment options that were available. People saw it as being criminally based, ravaging communities, and ruining the lives of the individual and their family members, and family members not knowing how to help. Folks were being arrested because they were addicted to drugs. It definitely was a different face of addiction at that time than what we're experiencing right now. It was a morality issue, it was a criminal justice issue, and people were just put into jail. Some folks seeing addiction as being a Black person's disease and not necessarily.
And Black people feel this way?
I think If they do, it's due to a lack of understanding as to what addiction actually is. There was a perception of people who have strayed away from those principles and those morals that all they have to do is pray their way back into that, and not recognizing folks from a religious perspective or in the church, not realizing the physiological aspects of addiction and how it could just sink its claws into folks.
You say crack was introduced into communities. For folks who aren't familiar with that history, how does that happen? And I ask because I wonder how that differs from how opioids came into our community.
Right, exactly. Crack came as a result of a lack of affordability for cocaine. Certain communities wanted to get that feeling of euphoria and could not afford, to buy cocaine. The challenge was the effect that folks were seeking did not last the amount of time. And so there were cravings for more, and folks had to use more in order to reach the same effect, the level, or to attempt to reach the same level of effect that they initially got when they first started using.
You and I talked before that there has been a switch in how somebody who was addicted to a substance was back, say, during the crack epidemic, and how the opioid epidemic is now. I think it was the primary campaign back in 2016. I saw a speech that then Governor Chris Christie made where he spoke about who he knew who had substance use disorder addictions.
My mother was a smoker. She smoked her whole life. She was addicted to nicotine. She tried everything she could to quit. When she turned 71, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. No one came to me and said, don't treat her because she got what she deserved. No one said that about someone who had cancer. Yet somehow, if it's heroin or cocaine or alcohol, we say, well, they decided they're getting what they deserved. I'm pro-life. And I think that if you're pro-life, that means you got to be pro-life for the whole life. Not just for the 9 months they're in the womb, all right? It's easy to be pro-life. For the 9 months they're in the womb, they haven't done anything to disappoint us yet. But when they get out, that's when it gets tough. The 16-year-old teenage girl on the floor of the county lockup, addicted to heroin, I'm pro-life for her too.
I remember at the time I thought, I haven't heard a Republican candidate say something like that ever.
Yeah.
So something changed.
Yes, and I see that as being folks, it was happening to them. It was happening to their families. And their folks were connected to...
And folks meaning white families.
Yes. It was happening to white families. And that changed the overall perspective of what addiction looks like and what addiction is. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, there was a strong perception that equates addiction to Black people. Once the opioid problem came to surface, where folks were being prescribed prescription opioids and folks were becoming addicted to those, it was not the Black population that they were looking at or that they were really concerned about at that time. It was their family members, it was folks' acquaintances, and I think it really hit home. And I think that's what actually caused the difference or the awareness or the eye-opening experience that addiction, and it seems as though it was relabeled.
That 2016 speech by New Jersey Governor Chris Christie took a stand on that relabeling. The presidential candidate talked on the campaign trail about a friend from law school who lost everything after becoming addicted to Percocet, prescribed for back pain.
By every measure that we define success in this country, this guy had it. Great-looking guy, well-educated, great career, plenty of money, beautiful, loving wife, beautiful children, great house. He had everything. He's a drug addict, and he couldn't get help, and he's dead. And when I sat there as the governor of New Jersey at his funeral, and looked across the pew at his 3 daughters sobbing because their dad is gone. There but for the grace of God go I.
Did that compassion for the person who had an addiction issue with the opioids and other substances, did that compassion transfer to African Americans who also had substance use disorder?
I do not think so, Trey. I do not believe it did. I think that the idea of Black Americans or Black West Virginians who have a substance use disorder, that there are internal and external stigma that are attached to that still. And I think it's still a separation of how folks should be treated as far as their addictions are concerned. And I think that creates other problems where Black West Virginians aren't seeking the treatment that is available to other folks.
What you just described to me sounds like something that I've heard over and over again, which is, yeah, I'm disappointed. Yeah, this seems unjust, but this is kind of what we've gotten used to.
Pretty much accustomed to, yes. And I think that the difference is that when we became aware of the challenges and the lack of resources and the lack of empathy and the stigma that was connected to addiction and mental health and behavioral health in general, drug-related incarcerations have increased for Black West Virginians as opposed to white West Virginians. Black West Virginians are overdosing at higher rates. The rates are substantial, but it's not publicized. I can tell you what we've experienced as an organization as far as trying to bring about the awareness of the most detrimental issues that are in the Black community and what we've been met with whenever we present those things. The CEO of PAC,
Reverend James Patterson.
Reverend Patterson, has, and other pastors here locally in Kanawha County have gone to legislators to advocate for change and policies and also seeking funding to address these things or to even research these things that are plaguing the community as it is, and have been met with a lot of disregard, a lack of interest. You know, it's been a frustrating lifetime of trying to get these things addressed or resolved. Seeing that there's not a lot of support, we've basically gathered together to see what it is that we can do amongst ourselves. The PAC decided that we need to move forward in trying to address some of these issues that are in our community to ensure that our folks have the resources to fill in some of the gaps and to see what we can do to help make things better in our community. You know, no one's coming to save us. And so if we don't do it, who will?
So what would be a special need that a Black West Virginian would require or that you would want to address that a white person would need?
It would be someone who is empathetic to the culture and someone who looks like them that they feel that they can trust, and someone who wants to recognize that racism does exist, and racism is a stigma that folks have to overcome when they're in treatment. There's a stigma that is attached to addiction, and there is a stigma that's attached to the racism that folks have to experience. And so we recognize that as an organization, and the solution is basically trying to meet people where they're at to ensure that they have a safe place or a safe environment to recover. And that's basically all that we're trying to offer. And a safe place. And those are things that we have learned as a result of the folks that we've encountered in the community.
After a break, we'll hear from a man who's living that journey. First, as someone who needed help, and now as a coach to others. You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part by a grant from the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation.
In difficult times, music gives us peace, brings us together, and helps heal us. It calms our nerves and brightens our days. That's why we're bringing you classic episodes of Mountain Stage on air and in our podcast. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find something that's familiar or brand new and feel the power of live music on our website, mountainstage.org.
Hey, Trey here. We'll continue with this award-winning Encore episode from our archives. This show recently received a regional Edward R. Murrow Award from the Radio Television Digital News Association for excellence in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hey, it's Trey, and this is Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. The Partnership of African American Churches, known as PAAC or PAC, is a major provider of addiction treatment in Kanawha County, West Virginia, as well as some other parts of the state. While its name might suggest a focus on the state's black residents, PAC's client population reflects the state's demographics. More than 90% white and roughly 4% black. In addition to offering residential, outpatient, and medication therapy, a major pillar of the operation is deploying peer recovery coaches into the community. Kevin Watkins, who we met earlier in the show, is one of them.
I grew up on Charleston's west side, actually on 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue in the alley.
And to somebody who is not from West Virginia, not from Charleston, what's the west side of Charleston like?
The west side of Charleston is to me, because I grew up there, and I'm just going to tell you like it is.
Okay.
It's the valley of the shadow of death. That's what it is.
Okay.
I have a lot of people up on that mountain up there that has passed from various forms of sicknesses.
So you're referring up on the mountain, you're talking about the graveyard.
The graveyard, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a reminder every time I look up there, yeah.
It hasn't always been, but right now that would be one of the parts of Charleston that has a high concentration of African American residents.
And not only just that part of the west side, I was actually raised up out of Orchard Manor back in the day, and they used to call it the Woo.
The Woo, that's right.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I got most of my experience from of the world.
In the Woo.
In the Woo. That's all we knew. We didn't know that there was another world out there other than going to school and back to Orchard Manor and going to North Charleston Community Center. That's the only place that we ever went. So Orchard Manor was our life. That's why we named it back then the Little Apple, because it's a lot of stuff happening. There was so much excitement in Orchard Manor, didn't nobody want to leave.
Watkins describes his childhood neighborhood as tight-knit. Everybody knew everybody's business.
They kept an eye on us, and they fed us. They took care of us. They knew our parents and stuff was at work or wasn't home, so they was like our guardians.
We're talking to each other because you've told me that you were in recovery for alcohol addiction.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you took a drink?
The first time I ever took a drink in my life, during this time, my mother and my dad, they were separated. I remember my mom used to have all these, her friends come over and they had these parties and stuff. And, and I was a cleanup man. I was young, and I wanted to try what that liquid was in that glass. And so I was the cleanup man. So I come through and I pull all the liquor and all the beer in a glass, and I sneak it back in my room, and then I drink it. That's the first time I ever experienced alcohol is from them times. It was more behind that than just the...
But that's, how old were you?
I say I was probably about, during the time, I was probably about like 12, 13 years old. They used to call me Calhoun back in the day because I did crazy stuff. I was one of them kind that I wanted to prove a point.
When Kevin and his friends would hang out, alcohol was often part of the picture. It was all fun and games until he started having trouble at school.
The alcohol was causing me to not use my mind right, and I was always found myself out doing something that I ain't had no business, breaking in somebody's car, stealing something out of somebody's yard. I was always in some kind of trouble, but the only time that I ever did that is when I drank. I didn't get to graduate out of high school from Stonewall because of the trouble that I was in, hanging around with the wrong crowds.
Stonewall Jackson High School, was where you went to school.
In my senior year, when that happened, I could have really got into a whole lot of serious trouble. During the time they had John Hay, instead of him sending me to prison, he sent me to a juvenile offenders home for youthful offenders. Actually gave me a chance. They sent me for 6 months to a year.
Watkins's troubles started to escalate. His friends introduced him to other drugs, pot, then pills, then eventually speed, which he injected into his veins.
What I did was I targeted certain people that I didn't really get along with. That's how I fulfilled my addiction. I had a teacher that was trying to help me and trying to teach me in the way that I should go. A lot of times I stayed in the office all the time. And I was one of them kids that had ADD, what you call it. I couldn't never sit still. I was always moving. And I don't think that he knew what kind of problem I had. Or he wouldn't have powdered me the way he did all the time. I know it become a problem when I tried to break in his house. After what you done been through, you can look back over your shoulder and you can say, why was I doing all that? I think one of the reasons why I was doing it is because during the time my mother and my dad had a divorce. During that time, my dad could never come around because he's already started another family. So what happened was I never had that support system that made sure that I stayed out of trouble, made sure that I was playing sports and doing the thing. I never had that support like most families that I grew up with in Orchard Manor during the time. For some reason, I feel like I fell through the cracks.
Watkins would often drink until he blacked out, waking up in places he didn't recognize.
Sometimes I used to wake up in the old county jail back then before correction was even started. Didn't even know why I was there. Beat up, bleeding. I knew I had a situation on my hands.
Watkins's first experience with addiction treatment was at the detention center as a teenager.
So you got to take AA, you got to take NA, whatever drug of choice that you was on, that's the class that you had to take in order to get probation or parole during them time. Them was the stipulations back then. Get your GED. You can't go, you ain't going nowhere until you get this, once you complete this program. And a lot of time we was forced to do a program that we wasn't even ready for. It was a way to get out of prison quicker and faster if we complete the program and not being serious about it. I got to the mindset where I thought that couldn't nobody help me.
Right.
And I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I was too ashamed to go out and cry out for help because I didn't want nobody to know that I was an alcoholic.
Like many Black Americans, Watkins ended up stuck in the criminal justice system and in a cycle of unsuccessful treatment. However, the path to successful recovery started in jail while sitting in a cell.
I was in a place where I couldn't get a hold of it. Once I was clean and I was sober, I knew how to go from there.
And you haven't relapsed?
And I haven't relapsed since.
It wasn't the state psychiatrist or jail time that made Watkins accept that he was an alcoholic. He realized that his need to hide his drinking was a red flag. That prompted Watkins to start to think about what made him want to keep his secret in the first place.
I think that in the Black community, I think we don't trust each other enough. I had doubts about seeking help is because it's who you tell that you have the problem with. And a lot of times we keep these things from our family and our loved ones, and we keep them even from the black community because we don't want them people looking down on us. That's why a lot of times black folks don't want to get help, is because the people that you can get the help from is the ones that you run from.
What could be done better to support people in your community who have problems with drugs and alcohol?
The answer is this. More people like me. More people out there that have barriers set up in their own minds. And a lot of times that these people don't want to come forward.
You got to step out of the shadows, right?
You got to, look here. The Bible teaches on ask, seek, and knock. Ask and seek and knock. If you don't ask the doctor what kind of symptom you got, then you'll never know what you got. When people see people like me, and they knew where I came from, and see me in a position like that to reach out and help somebody else, to be a pillar to in society, especially on Charleston's west side, then that gives them a hope. If you never seek somebody for a situation that you're going through, you ain't going to find it. If you never
seek a solution, right?
Go around and knock on the pastor's door, you never know what he has spiritually to tell you. When Jesus was up on the Mount of Olives and he was looking down, and the disciples said, Jesus, what are we going to do with all these people? Why don't you just send them away? And Jesus said, no, we can't send them away because they don't have a shepherd to shepherd them. And so Jesus wept. The shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. It's because Jesus seen their condition. And my faith tells me just do the right thing. If you got the tools to do the right thing, use what you got, or even that could be taken from you. And that's scriptural.
Are you saying that in so many ways you've had the opportunity to stand on the precipice there, and you can look and you see there's people who need help, and you're here to help them?
Every day I see somebody that I know came from where I came from, and can't understand these people. Half these people was great athletes, better than me, supposed to be in the pros.
Yeah.
And I see people out there pushing around buggies and got 4 coats on it and on SSI. And where's your money going, buddy? The people that I grew up with, the people that I love, the people that I see falling through the cracks every day. There is help out there, but I don't think it's the right people that my people see that can help them, because that's where the problem comes at.
Our country's history of treating addiction differently along racial lines reverberates to this day. And those effects take time and investment to address. However, today in America, there's a massive financial shift underway. The new Trump administration is currently in court battling to slash federal investments in long-standing agencies and initiatives. I wondered how that might affect the money that supports the work that PAC is trying to do. So I picked up the phone again.
I'm Bob Hansen, and I am retired after approximately 49 to 50 years in the behavioral health field in West Virginia, which included a 2-year stint as the director of the Office of Drug Control Policy for the state of West Virginia.
And that last position, I think, was the position you were in when I met you, and they consider that the drug czar. What does a drug czar do?
Well, my first task really was to coordinate the development of a comprehensive plan to address the opioid epidemic that was facing our state, which really had a lot of strategies that addressed prevention, treatment, recovery, the criminal justice system, etc.
How are we doing right now today?
I think there's been a lot of progress made, and really there are a few benchmarks, but the most important benchmark, I think, for our state is the number of overdose fatalities. Recent data shows that fatalities are going down in our state. The problem really is, though, that our state is so high above other states as far as the mortality, the fatality rate. So we've got a long way to go, and we shouldn't give up.
Where do treatment programs or clinics get their money?
Today, there are multiple sources. The federal government is very good in allocating federal money to each state each year to fight the opioid epidemic. And then Medicaid is the second, if not the largest, financer of addiction treatment services today.
Was that always the case, though?
No, and for many years, for a long period of time, until around 2018, Medicaid was not a funder of residential treatment at all. In West Virginia, applied so that they could use Medicaid funding to pay for a whole host of addiction treatment-related services, which included short-term residential treatment.
Before then, if you were low income and didn't have access to private insurance, you didn't get treatment. For many, that meant continued addiction, ending up in jail, or cycling through both.
The growth in residential treatment programs in West Virginia has been really through the roof. If you go back to 2016, 17, and 18, the number of treatment beds for the whole population of the state was 150, 200 beds, and now today there is 1,700 plus residential treatment beds. So the growth over less than 10 years has been tremendous. Providers are making commitments and growing residential services on the theory that Medicaid funding will continue to be available.
If I think about this funding process like a pipeline, can you take me from start to finish? Does the money start in Washington?
So the bulk of Medicaid money comes from the federal government, starting with approval through Congress and the president, and then West Virginia, because of its match rate, has to come up with the match dollars.
In West Virginia, for every $3 federal dollars spent on Medicaid, the state matches $1.
I think when it was available, I think it was a sigh of relief, and it allowed the state and different private providers and nonprofits to begin to develop services. But it's a slow process. You don't wave your wand and have all these outpatient providers, all these residential treatment providers. So it's been a gradual increase each year, I think, over time. We still have in West Virginia a severe behavioral health workforce shortage.
So for providers like a Partnership of African American Churches, whose specialized mission is to give culturally sensitive treatment to persons of color, but ultimately they serve everybody, how might their funding sources differ from other treatment facilities?
I don't think they're different. I think they're pretty much funded in a similar fashion. I think as they're applying for grant funding, be it through the Bureau of Behavioral Health, if funds are available there, or through the federal government, hitting on their expertise. But other than that, the basic core funding for them is no different than any other addictions treatment provider.
I guess I'm wondering, how could efforts to make changes to federal agencies, how would that impact addiction and treatment programs?
During President Trump's first administration, funding for addiction treatment and recovery services was a priority. It's difficult to see into a crystal ball if there are cuts in Medicaid, how that will impact. I have no idea at this point. The Medicaid funds all sorts of agencies across the spectrum, so singling certain agencies out because of diversity issues, I think, would be impossible or very hard to do. I hope there aren't any cuts for first, but if there are, it'll be a uniform type of cut that will be across the board and not single certain agencies out. If there were draconian cuts, the amount of services would drop dramatically fairly quickly, because The entities that are providing these treatment services are for-profit as well as not-for-profit agencies, and they need a revenue source to keep their doors open. And if there's significant cuts in a revenue source, they have to make their decision on how to continue operating or where to make cuts.
In today's climate, federal dollars feel more targeted, more politicized than ever. I had to ask Reverend James Patterson if he's worried that funding for racially and culturally sensitive treatment programs could face cuts in the coming months.
You mentioned the term, was it cultural
competency? Yes.
To some, that language might sound familiar to the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which since the inauguration of Donald Trump in his second presidency and the governor of West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey, those are terms that don't seem to be in favor. And I guess I just wanted to know, what do you make of that?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. And what I had decided my answer was going to be was no comment. But I'm going to give you another answer. The African-American population of the state of West Virginia is about, I think, 3.4%,
yeah,
which equates to about 70,000 people maybe.
Right.
It doesn't matter which arena that you want to talk about. We really can't move anything. We can't vote anybody in or out of office. We can't make any bureaucrat change a policy or what have you. So I'm just waiting and seeing. I believe that the government will pitch in and try to deal with this situation because it impacts us as a state from a negative perspective in terms of all kinds of challenges. I believe that the people in charge, no matter what party they're from, or no matter what their particular personal preferences are, I believe that they will do what's necessary to address this issue. I have a master's degree from a little-known university in the state of West Virginia called Future Generation School of Graduate Studies. It's located in Pendleton County.
Okay.
And I was among the first graduating class. And I have a picture. We graduated at the foot of Mount Everest. That's where our graduation was.
Okay.
They had demonstration projects in India, Nepal, Tibet, Peru, upstate New York, and West Virginia. And you had to visit each one of those demonstration projects during your course of study for 6 weeks. When I got to India, we went to a place way up in the mountains. And I met a young man there by the name of Manoj. And we sat up hours and hours late in the night arguing over the definition of equity. And he came to convince me what equity was. Because I, like a lot of people, thought equity was equality. If there's some resources, then from my perspective, equity meant I got the same amount that you did. And so he gave me a simple definition of equity. He said, equity is applying the largest amount of resources to the largest amount of need. That's all it is. It's applying the largest amount of resources to the largest amount of need. We service whoever comes through the door. We service whoever comes through the door. Remember, our mission is to address substance use disorder. The person that is dealing with substance use disorder, it doesn't matter to us. But we want to make sure that if there are people of color that are suffering from substance use disorder, that we have all the tools necessary in aiding them to overcome that challenge. And there are times when an understanding of one's culture is a part of that.
That word, understanding, is central to so many of the goals for the Partnership of African American Churches. It's designed to provide access and support for those suffering from addiction. Another goal is to increase awareness about the disproportionate impact of addiction on Black people. Over the years, Reverend Patterson and his colleagues, like Dr. Wendy Lewis, have seen a shift in the broader understanding of addiction. Lewis says watching the tide turn has been a source of hope.
There's never enough speech about hope and resolution and how we can make things better for folks. Doing the work, having a level of compassion and empathy for folks who are struggling, and knowing that there are folks who care about the struggle. There is more attention being directed toward addiction generally, and that there are more opportunities for folks to seek treatment, and working with and getting the opinions of the folks who are actually living it, as opposed to folks who are so far removed from what's happening, thinking that they have the solutions. We're asking the folks who are actually experiencing, addiction and the ramifications of addiction.
Dr. Wendy Lewis says the nation's awareness and understanding of addiction has grown as substance use affects people of all backgrounds. That can help replace long-standing stigmas with more open-minded acceptance as people find ways to stand up for each other. You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this show was me, Trey Kay, Christina Stella, and Kate Smith. Michael Lipton, Tristan Lozow, and Ahmed Solomon wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation, the CRC Foundation, and the Daywood Foundation. Hey, we'd love to get your thoughts about this episode. Would you share them with us on our Facebook page or on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Us Them Podcast? Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the mentorship program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. Hey, we'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
From